Hello, my name is Angela Hall, and I'm an associate professor in the School of Human Resources and Labor Relations in the College of Social Sciences at Michigan State University. I'm happy to be able to have the opportunity to discuss with you my research. I have several streams of research that I'm actively engaged in, but one that I have been engaged in the longest and the one that is probably nearest and dearest to me is the notion of social influence, particularly within the context of diversity and inclusion within the workplace. Before I tell you about my research, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I am a graduate of Florida State University, where I got my PhD in organizational behavior and human resources. I also received a law degree from Florida State University, and I am a licensed attorney. I've been at Michigan State University since 2012. And if I had a 30-second elevator speech that I had to describe what I do at my job, I would say my research involves studying human interactions at work. I study social influence, and I'm going to give the definition of social influence in a little bit. It is a broad umbrella topic or construct that encompasses many things, including workplace accountability and political skill. And I'll discuss those constructs in a little bit as well. So what is social influence? An older definition is that social influence refers to how people change their behaviors to meet the demands of a social environment. We're social beings. We are born that way, human beings are. And we want people to engage with us, and we want people to have a favorable opinion of us. So impression management has to do with those behaviors that people engage in so that people form a favorable opinion of themselves. We want people to have a favorable opinion of us because there are rewards associated with that. Like at work, you want your boss to have a high opinion of you so that you can get good evaluations. But even in non-work contexts, we want people to have a good opinion of us. Have you ever been walking in the parking lot of a grocery store or something like that, and you trip and you look around, you try to see if anyone's looking at you because you don't want to be embarrassed, right? That's just a basic human reaction. We generally want people to think good things about us. Influence tactics are those types of behaviors that we can engage in to guide people to do things that we want. There are a wide array of tactics, such as forming a coalition. Like a group of employees may want to affect some type of change in their workplace. So they may go to their boss and say, hey, we as a group, we would like to see this type of change because there's strength in numbers. Another type of influence tactics may be a power display where someone uses some power or coercion to get what they want. They may say, well, if you don't do this, I'm going to write you up. An employer, a supervisor can say that to an employee. So there are various types of influence tactics that can occur. More recently, Ferris and colleagues offered the definition of social influence at work to mean those types of behavioral tactics and strategies that individuals use to influence outcomes influenced by others or controlled by others, such that they maximize the positive things that occur to them and minimize the negative things that will occur to them. So those are the types of behaviors that people engage in to make more good things happen and lessen the bad things that happen to them. So you may say, Angela, how is accountability a type of social influence tactic? Well, people can shape their accountabilities at work. Specifically, let's say within the context of something called job crafting. With respect to job crafting, what can occur is that you may have something that you're really, really good at your job. And so you became a person that people, like your coworkers go to you or your boss go to you to do this one thing. And so you become the go-to person to do this thing. And so that becomes part of your job. And in turn, you may be able to give up some type of task or role that you don't like and able to do the things that you really do like to do. Political skill. There have been hundreds of studies in the last decade and a half on political skill, and they pretty much show the same thing. And political skill is associated with beneficial outcomes. People who are politically skilled get better raises, get more promotions, get better job assignments. And what political skill is, it's ability to engage in influence tactics and behaviors in such a way that is artful. People don't feel like they're being manipulated. People see a sincerity in you that they want to help you. There are four main dimensions of political skill. The first one is social astuteness. That's how well you can read social situations. The second one is interpersonal influence, and that's how well you can use certain types of tactics. Networking ability, how well you can form social relationships or professional relationships with people. And apparent sincerity, how sincere you look. And when people are sincere, people are more likely to want to do things for them. So this all brings you to my research. What do? I have two streams of research that I want to talk to you about, and then that I've been doing for the last few years, and then something that has really come up more recently. So one thing that I've been doing is looking at political skill training in the STEM fields. First of all, is that there's studies that have been shown, including studies that have been conducted on behalf of the National Academies of Science, that say that women are and underrepresented minorities and other marginalized groups, either that even when they do complete their degrees in STEM, they don't necessarily stay in the STEM fields working in them because they feel that it's hostile, less welcoming, and things like that. So part of my research is to do types of training so that people within political skill, STEM environments are more politically skilled, such that they will engage in fewer microaggressions, fewer insensitive comments, being more inclusive. And this is part of a larger training on diversity and inclusion. This is an approach that even some major corporations are doing because they have realized, for example, in the tech industries, that sometimes being a proficient worker is only been defined as being able to produce that technical product, but you have to be able to work with people and get along. And to the extent that we can train people to do that better and recognize when they're engaging in behaviors that they might not even realize they're engaging in, that are alienating other people, you should be able to have greater retention of different groups within the organization. A second type of training that I am going to do and that I've been working on has to do with the political skill training of STEM students and STEM workers. Remember I told you that people who are politically skilled are able to get better resources for themselves? Well, we know that people of color, women, other marginalized groups consistently report that in a lot of STEM areas, they feel like they are in an island of themselves, or they feel that they're not getting the same type of mentoring. Well, this type of training will teach them not only how to get those resources for themselves, but to be able to form coalitions with people from marginalized and non-marginalized majority groups in order that they can protect themselves against types of things that they may feel are microaggressions. And I think that this is very, very important. And this is in line with some research that talks that a lot of times people of underrepresented groups have a political skill deficiency. That's the term, political skill deficiency, because they are not giving that informal mentoring that other groups have routinely received throughout the years. So that's one stream of research. A second has to do with accountability management. I talked about job crafting. Well, I'm looking at how people can job craft within their workplace so that they can be looked at as a person who is a diversity, equity, and inclusion champion. But however, we know that in order to affect change, we need not just only people from marginalized groups to be the DEI champions, we need other people, especially because if that role only goes to people of color, it can create burnout. So ways to job craft so that people who are in historically marginalized groups are not the people who are always the ones to ask to do certain things. Finally, another type of accountability management that I think is very important to study is the notion of reducing what people have called, within, at least in the context of the African American community, the Black tax. It could be called the Latinx tax or the Native American tax or whatever type of marginalized group that you might say, but saying that people who have been historically marginalized oftentimes have additional burdens. They feel like they have to oftentimes perform better. They have certain types of roles. They're always oftentimes target to mentor underrepresented people. In addition, they may not get credit for that, and ways that people who are in marginalized groups can be able to navigate and be successful in the work, be a DEI champion if they want to be, but not to be burdened with that to the point that it distracts them from being able to succeed like other groups. So that is another area of research that I am currently doing. Finally, within the context of the recent pandemic that we're in, looking at, we have more virtual meetings. Like, for example, I am recording this remotely from my dining room. Looking though, there was a recent New York Times article that talked about how women particularly are saying that they feel as though they're being marginalized and talked over in virtual meetings. So I'm doing some work on what are ways to make sure that there's more inclusion in virtual meetings. And also, when we're talking about accountabilities, we have multiple accountabilities. We call it a web of accountabilities that we live in. We have multiple accountabilities at work, we have multiple accountabilities at home, and they mesh. And now, particularly with the pandemic, it's hard to separate work from home. And we know that the COVID-19 pandemic has hit African American and Latinx families and populations harder than any group in this country, other than like the elderly who are, also hit. But are there ways that we can help groups that are more hit by the pandemic to manage their accountabilities, and recognizing that being membership in this group may create even more challenges during the time of the pandemic? So those are just a few projects that I'm working on. I am very happy to take questions. If you want to give me an email, give me a call, and I'm just happy to be able to talk about some of these research projects. Thank you for listening to my video, and I hope to hear from you. Thanks.